निर्भेद ओडिशा को सब्सक्राइब करंतु आउ बेल आइकन को दबांतु आउ पांतु नवा वीडियो अपडेट्स जता शीघ्र।
Good afternoon, everyone. And since I'm an Adivasi, although I don't have a methodological training in political science, so as to say, but still, and my training has been in economics, but still I'll sort of try to outline what the Adivasis or the tribal movement currently is in Odisha, and how this emancipation intellectual movement as outlined by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Jyotiba Phule, how it's missing, and especially since they are the beacons of modern democracy in India, how that is missing in our state. So, if we look at the tribal dominated areas in Odisha, they are mostly, obviously not in the center, but the peripheries. If you look at the western part of Odisha, the northwestern part of Odisha, you have parts of Sundargarh, Sambalpur, Mayurbhanj, which is tribal majority districts. Then you have the southern districts, which are again the periphery of the state, Rayagada, Kandhamal, Koraput. So basically, in the state, if you see, the tribal dominated areas are already at the peripheries, right? So our movements are also in the peripheries, so as to say. And that's not a situation only in Odisha, but in most of the other states too. If you see at West Bengal or Jharkhand, of course, that's a tribal state, but if you look at other states such as Maharashtra or West Bengal or Andhra, most of the tribal dominated areas are at the peripheries. But anyway, in Odisha, when it comes to the tribal dominated areas, there are specifically 4 kinds of movements that are taking place right now. One movement is obviously the ongoing movement which is on land rights, and it has been going forever now. Land rights displacement and against land and forest alienation, and for that Birsa Munda has been an everlasting symbol. The other movement that is going on is the language and the cultural movement, and that we are seeing mostly in the Santal dominated areas, which has given rise to a new cultural sort of expression from the perspective of Adivasis. The other is the economic integration movement, which is led by the state, of course. So currently we are seeing Adivasi Melas taking place. So the tribal, although we are in the peripheries of the state, we are getting more and more integrated into the economics of the state. But yet, we are seeing that Koraput Coffee or Mission Sakti, the tribal is becoming the face of those enterprises, but yet, like we are the production is ours, we are the face of that, but we are still not, part of the mainstream. Like people will still look at you in a derogatory manner. So the state is here in a very contradictory. There is a contradiction over here. Like the state is trying to market us, our products as Adivasi produced, but still we are at the periphery still. So that's one movement which is being led by the state. The another all-encompassing movement is obviously the fight for identity assertion. And so this movements, language movement, economic, land and identity, these are very intertwined movements, and these movements then again when we come to the movement for identity, like Professor Aloysius was saying, like identity, there can be different ways of asserting identity. One can be by saying that we have a different philosophical way of life, but another can be, like what we are seeing in the tribal belts is because now there is this Hindutva nationalism assertion of that Hindu unity and all that. So in Adivasi areas, we are seeing assertion of Adivasi identity through religion. So we are seeing that religion is gaining more traction. Religious assertion is gaining more traction as identity assertion rather than an Adivasi philosophical way of life, which is through nature and all that. So philosophy is getting morphed into religion. Like religion is taking over philosophy over here. And that's, I won't say it's necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes religion can be a form of emancipation for Adivasis. Let's say, for example, Adivasis who adopted Christianity, or Dalit Christians. For them, religion became a source of emancipation. But here, there is again caveat to this, because religion sometimes becomes extreme. It does goes to extreme. So here again, Adivasis should be laying more emphasis on the way of life rather than religion assertion, right? So so here in Odisha, what I see is most of our Adivasi leaders today most of our Adivasi leaders in the western or the southern or or the chief minister of the state or the president of our country, they are in a party whose ideologies themselves have been complicit in the brutalities against tribals. So that is a big dichotomy which is arising in Adivasi ideology, our way of life, and our political representation. So this is a big dichotomy which is there. So this is like you can see that the way of life is here, but our political representation is here. How is this arising? And this is obviously due to lack of intellectual movement. And so there is a strong need for an ideology for the oppressed minorities in Odisha, similar to how it was for the oppressed minorities in UP or Maharashtra, right? So here, when it comes to the oppressed minorities in Odisha, especially in the Adivasi context, we obviously look at Birsa Munda, and when we look at Birsa Munda, there is another problem here for me. We as Adivasis, we revere Birsa Munda, but we revere him as Bhagwan Birsa Munda. So here the problem again is that when we are saying that there is historically it has been documented that Birsa Munda got divine intervention, and he in that divine intervention he got tasked with leading the Adivasis. But here again what arises as an implication is that some things are only divinely possible versus what is humanly possible. So here the spiritual beliefs come into the picture. This is not just in the so here then arises the issue of that Adivasis, the leadership itself is something which comes as a divine intervention and all that and so forth, which is again there in the the Hindu hierarchy when we talk about Brahminism. they say that it was, you know, like they are on the higher order because it has been, you know, divinely interpreted that way. So these are some of the parallels, and so here now I feel in modern independent India, which is governed by a constitution, it is, you know, like very necessary to bring Dr. Ambedkar into the picture. Especially in our Adivasi belt, we do acknowledge that due to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, we have got reservation, but we don't. We are, you know, there is almost we don't acknowledge him for that the drafting committee also brought in the fifth schedule. Dr. Ambedkar, you know, when they sat in the Constituent Assembly, the drafting committee, they were, and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, because he knew the atrocities that had happened in the Rajmahal Hills, Chota Nagpur Plateau, you know, when the British, in the colonial times, he knew that, you know, like, when the rail networks were being laid, Adivasis were being, because they were very expert, you know, tree fellers, Britishers used Adivasis to do all those work, but, you know, they had prohibited the Adivasis who were strongly in connection with nature to, you know, use the forest as their own. So criminal tribes, that thing came into the picture. So here, you know, so B.R. Ambedkar was very much aware of that issue, and he, when they drafted the constitution, they inserted the fifth schedule into the constitution, knowing that the Adivasis have a different way of life and they should have autonomy over that way of life. So, so the fifth schedule, which you know, the drafting committee brought in, we obviously, we Adivasis, we don't attribute it to Baba Sahib much, but I think, you know, when we are fighting for community forest rights or land right, we should be very thankful that the drafting committee brought that in. There are other parallels which I also see in Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's agitation at Mahatse for water, which was a common public good and cast as being an obstruction to access public good. And now, which is why, you know, when Dr. B.R. Ambedkar brought the fifth schedule and Adivasis as having autonomy over forest and land, it allows, you know, Adivasi people to have autonomy over commons, over the community forest rights and that. So here, sometimes, you know, in Odisha, when I see, we might say that, okay, given that our chief minister and president, they are from tribe, we might have the illusion that we have political democracy. Or when we are saying that Adivasi Mela and all of that is taking place and the Adivasi is put front and center, we might feel as if, okay, the state is working towards economic democracy. But that is sort of an illusionary sort of, you know, like, I feel that is sort of an illusion over here, because the political representation itself, you know, it's the ideology itself is quite different. So, so here, when we are talking about democracy, and especially in the tribal context, political democracy, social democracy, and economic democracy, we have to sort of understand how those three axes of democracy, how we Adivasis are placed in those three axes of democracy. And so another thing which I read in The Annihilation of Caste by Dr. Ambedkar was that he has remarked that morality has become caste bound, and we see that the moral codes of conduct of the let's say one particular religion, it becomes an imposition on the moral code of conduct on some others. So that and that is taking place. For example, in Odisha, we see lynching, hate crimes do take place. So this kind of morality shouldn't be caste bound. We have to break away from that. So hopefully, and also through Ambedkar, if we read Ambedkar, then we will be able to reach other philosophers. Say, for example, when we are looking at Adivasis or the Dalits in India, and the hate crimes, policy-induced hate crimes that are taking place, or lynchings that are taking place based on our way of life, then we can reach other philosophers. Let's say, for example, in America, let's say, for example, philosophers like W.E.B. Du Bois, who all worked, who all documented and gave rise to black cultural expression. So it's very important for us Adivasis to engage with Ambedkar away from just reservations, and look at it how he gave us different ways, let's say through fifth schedule, to maintain an autonomy over our ways of life. Yes, this is. There are some more things, but there is also another thing which I wanted to say is that in our Adivasis life world, we sometimes think that caste is not there, but I see in our Adivasi societies also there is, like I go to my village and I see between our tribes and between the other PVTG, Korwas and Lohras, there is a distinction. Like, my elder aunt, she will say, I will not touch theirs. Like, although we will sit with them, even if we are sitting together, she will say, no, I will not touch the food that they have eaten. So it's nonsensical to say that, caste is not there in tribal societies, so we will not engage with the teachings of B.R. Ambedkar. But then again, it is there. So we tribals, we really need to look into what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, into the writings of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, as well as Jyotiba Phule and Savitribai Phule. So cheer him, and hopefully as a network we are able to communicate with each other and build up the movement